Along with many people, I really enjoyed the original Mirror's Edge game that came out in 2008. It was super unique. It had fresh gameplay mechanics. It was the first game that I can remember attempting to really capture parkour in gameplay mechanics, and also to do it in the first-person shooter format. That was pretty special and interesting at the time. And also the fact that it was a first-person shooter, but the gameplay was really not focused on combat or shooting. It was focused on running away from people that are shooting at you. Mirror's Edge succeeded where it stuck to its main asset, the unique gameplay love child of puzzle games, platformers, and first-person shooters. Combined with the game's visual style, Mirror's Edge really had something quite special to offer. When the first game came out in 2008, I think what really stuck out immediately to everybody was that visual style. The way that red is used to sort of distinguish your path or your objectives, but it also is a really pleasing aesthetic choice. And also, Mirror's Edge was one of the first games I can remember that took this very clean visual style approach to sci-fi and sort of futuristic dystopian world building. So anyways, I played the original game right when it came out in 2008, and I really liked it. I really enjoyed it. I was super young. I'm not gonna do the math of what my age was, but I was really young when it came out, so any flaws that it really had, I probably overlooked because I was kind of like in that dumb child gaming phase where I kind of didn't really know what the fuck was going on half the time, and I was just like stumbling ass backwards through all the objectives and just like following strictly based on visual design, like telling me where to go. But the game did such a good job of that I was able to navigate it and ended up finishing the game, which was an achievement for me at the time. I often would just like get lost in the first like third of a campaign or a story mode and then sort of just never finish the game. I was kind of a little idiot back in the day, but whatever. I remember really liking this game, and so you'd think that when a sequel was announced, or at least when it released, that I would be on that shit, but I literally didn't even know this game had a sequel until like 2 years ago, when I just happened to look up Mirror's Edge on YouTube and found a gameplay video of Catalyst, which is the sequel. So Mirror's Edge Catalyst came out in 2016. I had no idea. I don't know why. Either the marketing wasn't great or I don't know. But one thing that probably influenced that was the fact that this game did not at all achieve the success that Mirror's Edge, the original game, did. Gamers in general and critics both seem to agree that this was kind of a special title and that it had something really cool to offer, and it tried to do something different than what was being done in the game industry at the time. So I downloaded Mirror's Edge Catalyst while I was at college, I believe, and played through it. And so I'm going to sort of give you my notes on it here, starting with the main strengths of this sequel. The biggest thing that this game has to offer is its parkour mechanics. They're smooth and satisfying. They're challenging to fully master, like to be able to really flow with the parkour and not get caught on edges and different surfaces, and to not either fall to your death or just kind of like eat shit. It's actually quite challenging to really get good at that and to be able to string these lines together smoothly. But it's fun, and it offers a real incentive to keep playing to get better at that, because there's nothing more satisfying than when you just go on a flawless run and are just flowing through it the whole way. And then the next thing is the environment design. The aesthetics, once again with the sequel, are really clean and vibrantly colorful. And so this completely turned away from the typical grungy, dilapidated cyberpunk aesthetic that dystopian sci-fi has become oversaturated with. I just feel like everything about the future, I mean, it's probably accurate because, you know, we are wrecking the shit out of this planet. So maybe it's accurate, But hey, I do like to venture into sci-fi without becoming clinically depressed from time to time, so this gave me an opportunity to do that. And I feel like this is kind of a forgotten aesthetic in some ways. The super clean, colorful, smooth, soft surfaces, that type of aesthetic when depicting futuristic, sci-fi cityscapes or environments. I feel like that's kind of something from a bygone era now that we've realized we're kind of fucked environmentally speaking, and yeah, cities are pretty gross, so they're probably not going to get just magically super nice and clean and colorful the more developed it gets. But hey, this sort of made me feel a little bit more hopeful for that, despite the authoritarian, like despotic rule that's happening in this city. We'll just overlook that because it looks nice, so that's good enough for me, I guess. I'm a shallow guy. The final thing that it did pretty well, that I'd say is a strength, is the soundtrack and sound design. The music compositions fit perfectly with the atmosphere of this game and like the environment design. And then on top of that, the diegetic sound effects and the ambient textures pair nicely with the soundtrack, and they just sort of add more depth to the environment and to the world. And since it's an open world game and you're kind of just running around through it, that actually added a lot to the experience, for me at least. I'm a big audiophile. I really like good sound design and music, so that's always going to be an asset in my book. Now, unfortunately, there were some significant weaknesses or shortcomings with this game as well, and I think these shortcomings are what caused the game to sort of go unnoticed and to not really receive any critical recognition. And even just, there wasn't really much of a community around the game. I'll randomly find a YouTuber here and there who's super into Mirror's Edge and likes it and just is willing to overlook its flaws to appreciate what it does right. And I consider myself one of those people, but there really is not a big community around this game at all. Like, there isn't even much of like a cult community around this sequel for whatever reason. Well, I'm actually about to probably get into the exact reasons, but so starting off, the small details are missing in most areas of this game, and some examples I can give you for that are the civilian character models that aren't like the NPCs that are offering you quests or story prompts or whatever. They're extremely repetitive and lifeless, so you'll be running through the city and you'll look over and see an environment that's rendered and it has like 16 people standing there, and when you look a little bit more closely, you realize that it's literally like 3 character models just multiplied into a group, and they're just awkwardly standing together as if it's just like a gathering of clones. It's really weird, and it just makes the game sort of lose its immersive capabilities when I noticed that. It sucks because if they had taken the time to really polish the game and finish all those details, I think it really could have been something pretty special. And I think it could have gotten maybe some recognition and some acclaim from the critics. Who knows? Furthering that, the background civilians, like the way background civilians, I know this is not a new technique and this is not an isolated occurrence with this game, but the far off background civilians are just these 2D silhouettes that really aren't even rendered very well. Like, they don't even look good in the distance, and they're not far enough in the distance at all to be like not even 3D. They're these weird like cardboard cutout people that they have no faces. It's just silhouette things that move weirdly around like as if they're crowds in public, but it doesn't work. It's weird and just makes the game feel more lifeless. And then on top of that, there are some very unpolished building models that are thrown in with the super detailed ones in a way that actually just calls attention to their own lack of detail rather than sort of padding out the cityscape and making it feel more dense and like developed. It sort of is just like, what the hell is this weird like building that doesn't really have very much detail? Why is it here among like the super detailed buildings? It just, again, breaks the immersion and makes it feel very cold and lifeless in a lot of ways. So the next big weakness of the game is the story mode. The story mode in the original Mirror's Edge was nothing to write home about, really. That wasn't the reason that the game was popular or like critically well received. But Catalyst's story is downright garbage. Most of the main characters lack any sense of humanity. They don't engage or connect with you at all, and they're just sort of in a lot of ways they're kind of not distinguished at all. They're very 2D. There's no nuance to them whatsoever. This is only made worse by the fact that the dialogue is just painful to sit through. Like, I ended up skipping most of the cutscenes throughout the whole second half of the game because there was just no reason to even sit through it. The story was taking me nowhere. The writing was just literally painful to sit through. I mean, like, I don't know who these writers are, man. I'm not trying to be a dick, but like some of these, I'm just like, do you guys observe humans interacting when you're like thinking about your writing? Because this is not human interaction. It's so fucking weird and like awkward. There are a few good performances, and like I feel bad because there are some actually decent actors involved with this production, and man, those people had to really put work in to make these lines do anything. I mean, like, Jesus, I can't imagine what they were thinking when they got these scripts and were like, fuck, we have to like make this presentable. But I don't know. Good job to them, because they at least make it, you know, somewhat tolerable, which was a challenge, because yeah, the story is just flat. I mean, it's nothing. So the next major weakness is the combat. The combat is forced on you so aggressively, and it just makes no sense. People come to this game for the parkour mechanics and the puzzles you solve with those mechanics. Like, nobody plays Mirror's Edge for the combat, because why would you do that? It's like, go buy a first-person shooter where the objective is to like kill everybody. Mirror's Edge is not supposed to be that. And yet EA decided to make combat a central element for almost every story mission in the game. Like, it's required, and it's so dragged out on each of these missions. It's unbelievable. And I'm just like, why? What decision making went into this? Why did you make that decision? I seriously don't understand. Even with this annoying feature though, I figured, okay, I'll just bang out the story mission so that I can focus solely on open world free running afterwards, which was the reason that I downloaded the game. So you can imagine that I was somewhat unpleased to discover that even after completing the whole story mode, these stupid KSEC enemy units are still peppered throughout the entire open world. So you will not be able to do parkour in peace, but instead you'll have to frequently maneuver your way around a bunch of people shooting at you, and you'll fuck up your routes. It's just so annoying. If I wanted to increase the tension of the parkour and have an escape element, I'd just replay the story missions. That would be the only reason I'd do that, because I'm not going back for the story because it sucks. The only reason I downloaded Mirror's Edge Catalyst was for the open world parkour. I thought it would be a fun and relaxing game to play in between the more action heavy titles that I normally take on. Yeah, so that was an illusion that was shattered very quickly once I finished the game and realized that these fuckers are still just around shooting at you while you're trying to do parkour. Kills the vibe pretty hard. But anyways, my verdict is that the things that Catalyst gets right, it gets very right. Like, despite all of my complaints, I still really enjoy the parkour mechanics as well as the environment design in general. And on top of that, I get a deep sense of childhood nostalgia around the original Mirror's Edge. And that kind of enhanced my experience with the sequel. That did it a lot of favors, I think. But regardless, if you're looking for both unique gameplay mechanics and visual design, then I would still recommend checking this game out, but just kind of going into it not expecting a super polished game at all. I mean, you're gonna have to overlook a lot of bullshit to really enjoy the things that the game does right. But I still think if you like the original one and you like the parkour mechanics and you're willing to sort of sift through some other stupid stuff to get that, then I would still recommend it. And I just think if somebody were to like take this game and remove the problems and then add in all those details, like the polish that it needs, and make make it entirely focused on the parkour and like the puzzle solving missions with that parkour, then this game would probably be a hit. Like, I think it would be really good. So still a fun one. So take it as you will, I guess.